Hello, and welcome. Ken Kors here again with another Explore Momentum online event for this week, and I've been excited to do this one. This is actually a presentation I often do in the Live Out Loud community. You might have seen me talk about social media or social networking, and I was at a biz networking event here in Roseville this week, and it became really obvious that I wanted to do a fundamentals of social networking marketing. And in fact, I'll say social media. I know they're kind of interchangeable terms, and I'm going to admit, as I talk about this tonight, I don't love the term social media, and here's why. Because when you think about media, especially traditional media, when it comes back to radio and television, what's hilarious to me is that people will call the new technology, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your YouTube, all the stuff that we're talking about tonight, they'll call it media. Now, what's interesting about it is that it's not media as we had been grown to know it for 100 years since the advent of radio, because media infers a one-way platform. It infers that we or me will be able to communicate whatever message I want to you, complete with whatever positioning I have, complete with whatever I want to add to it. And so then you end up with advertising that's a lot like Mad Men, for those of you that are here in the US that watch that. Brilliant people sitting in rooms creating brilliant marketing pieces that would position a message exactly how they wanted it. And there wasn't a whole lot of thought to how it would be received, other than, will that make people talk about the product, buy the product, do any of those things? Now, what's interesting about social media, and I really, truly believe that this is the revolution in the space. Most people think about technology and the internet itself as a revolution, which it certainly is. You can't deny the fact that it is. But what's interesting about it is the usage of the technology and of these platforms has really changed us back to a more traditional form of marketing, where it isn't so much about our positioning and reputation. Those things are important. In fact, they're some of the most important things. But the expectation of the consumer has changed. The expectation of your viewer, the expectation of your audience has changed dramatically. In fact, that is really going back to a more traditional model. So I joke sometimes in rooms and say, that 1800s marketing model. If you were opening a new business, a local business in your town somewhere in the late 1800s, what would be among the first things that you would have to do? Well, first and foremost, you'd have to go out and you'd have to hang your sign. And I jokingly say you might have to ring a bell and get people's attention. And then when people did show up to your business or did start working with you, you would have to make sure that the experience was fantastic and phenomenal and worth talking about, and especially worth sharing with others. Now, this at its core is what social networking is really all about. It's actually put the power back in the consumer's hands. And what's also done is has made it easy for anybody to be a content creator. In fact, it was interesting today. I was in a meeting where I was discussing this with another networking person here in the Roseville area, and I appreciated their input. And they said the same. They said something that I hear often when I'm in conversation. And what they said was, there's a lot of people who do what you do. There's a lot of people who do marketing. There's a lot of people who are speaker trainers and coaches. And of course, I take it to heart. I say, well, yeah, I want to differentiate myself, and it's important to be different. And I also know that my experience and the way that I position myself and the way that I deliver information is different than anybody else. Doesn't matter if it's the same information. Doesn't matter if it's the same core set of skills that we're teaching. Doesn't matter if somebody else out there is teaching social networking or social media marketing. That's all fine with me, because I know the way that I'm going to do it is going to be different than the way that they're going to do it. And then I know if I am doing something that's valuable and interesting to other people, that I will get the feedback that I'm looking for. And if I'm not, I'm going to get that feedback too, because people aren't going to give me any. And so that is the heart of social networking, and that is the heart of what we're going to talk about tonight. But I'm going to take it to another level. How do you manage your social networking campaigns, and how should you be thinking about your social networking? And a lot of times, especially for those of you that have been in business for a while and are watching this, so maybe you're a member of the chamber or one of the biz groups that I've met to this point, I love to use offline marketing analogies when I'm talking about online marketing, because what's interesting is a lot of us behave because of our relationship to technology very differently on social media or online or towards our online marketing in general than we would behave in the offline environment. And we all know that the people on the other end are the same people. The people that are seeing our message, regardless of whether they're seeing it at a networking meeting or whether they're seeing it online, they're the same people and they behave the same way. And there's some ways you can take advantage of that on social networking so that you are delivering an experience or something that grabs someone's attention. But at the end of the day, you're still dealing with people. And so you've got to think, how do people behave and how are you behaving in the space? So I love to use this analogy when I'm talking about social networking of thinking of yourself walking in to a big cocktail party. It might be a personal friend or it might be a business function, doesn't matter. But for the most part, the way that a lot of people treat, especially if they're using social media as their definition, a lot of people will treat it as if it were a platform or a podium. They're walking up to a platform or a podium at a cocktail party and proceeding to dig into their pitch or dig into their whatever it is that they want you to do. So use that cocktail party example. Keep that in the back of your mind. And if that's how you're approaching social networking, social media, then I would urge you not to do it at all. Some people say, wow, that's kind of controversial. It's true. I don't want you to do it badly because the reality is you've probably got one shot. Or if you make a bad reputation and you get out there, then you got to work really hard to overcome that. So it's not a one-way channel. You don't necessarily get to stand at a podium. You have to gather an audience and get people around you that are interested in what you have to say, what you have to offer, and it has to be compelling. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit tonight when I talk about motivators and what actually gets people motivated to take action on social networks, what actually motivates people to buy. So that cocktail party analogy, though, I'm going to go back to it a lot throughout this conversation. So if you were to do that at a cocktail party, if you were to walk from circle to circle, group of person to group of people and group to people, and just spam them, just promote your stuff. Just say, you know what? I'm an expert. Here's the things I want you to buy. I want you to take this. I want you to have my offer, blah, blah, blah. If that's how I behaved, chances are people wouldn't have very good things to say about me. Or people would just start ignoring me in general. They would say, you know what? I'm not interested in what you have to say. I don't like what you have to say. I'm going to go to a conversation where someone's doing something interesting. So let's talk about the social networks in relationship to that example, because you're walking in to a particular environment, regardless of what you think of it when you walk into social networking. And one rule that I love to set right from the beginning that's really important is if you are behaving on any type of marketing or any form of marketing based off of what you would do yourself. And I hear this all the time. If you say, man, I hate those quizzes, or man, I hate those list articles, or I would never click on that type of thing, I would urge you to take a step back. And I would urge you to think again, because if there is a reason that the biggest marketers in the space or people are investing millions of dollars in marketing campaigns are doing something over and over and over again, then chances are they're probably onto something. And chances are there's a reason for it. Normally, you want to look at what they're doing. And as an entrepreneur or a small business or even a large business, if you're watching this, you want to be able to adjust quickly to incorporate what they're doing or what's working in the space, along with what makes you original and unique. So you want to keep your flavor, your version. So if you're a social networking person or you're an expert in that and you go do your training, you should keep your flavor. A lot of you will train the exact same information, and that's okay. But you want to keep whatever your flavor is. And that's what you would do at a networking event, especially if you're a good networker. In fact, the best networkers that I see, in fact, at a lot of meetings, especially chamber meetings I've seen lately, I'll see a lot of people that are in the same space, a lot of financial experts, a lot of insurance experts, banking experts, realtors, mortgage people, lots of people that are in the same space. And the way that they differentiate is themselves and what they bring. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that too. How do you differentiate tonight? So this is the big picture of social networking. And I want to establish a precedent for what people are doing on social networks before we even head into that. So everyone's at their own little party in their own little gathering doing the different things that they want to do. And there's a pattern of behavior you want to take into account when you're getting into conversations with people. And I don't care what platform you're on. So I'm going to paint some examples here. So when keeping that cocktail party example in mind or that house party example in mind, I want you to take Facebook. because obviously Facebook is the biggest dog in the yard. It is the largest social network in the world, and it's the most popular. So immediately, marketing experts will say, you got to be on Facebook. Now, for most of you, I would say that's probably true, especially for the power of the Facebook advertising platform, and a little bit about what we talked about last week with remarketing, and I'll revisit some of that tonight. Now, Facebook is a great opportunity. It's a great place where a lot of people are gathered. But let me tell you what people aren't gathered on Facebook to do. For the most part, people are not gathered on Facebook to shop. And I'll make that very clear. Where do people go to shop online? Amazon, for the most part. And yes, other stores. And sometimes, occasionally, you can be drawn into a conversation on Facebook that'll make you buy something, but that person's got to be really influential and interesting. The vast majority of users are not on Facebook to do business. And in fact, Facebook recognizes this, and they strategize often against businesses who are just there to be self-promoting, self-aggrandizing, to talk about what they want to talk about. Because Facebook, you should really be thinking of, is a reunion of your family and your friends and your community. Most people who are on Facebook are linked to their family, their friends, maybe some coworkers and colleagues, but people that they already know and that they already have relationships with. So imagine that you're walking into someone's family reunion and you start again, promoting things heavily or spamming people or pushing your message really hard. Probably not going to be received all that well. And frankly, Facebook will just cancel your account if that's the way that you behave online on Facebook. They'll either make it so that you never have any followers at all and they never hear anything that you have to say, which Facebook has the power to do, or they simply boot you off Facebook and call it a violation of their terms of service. So first thing to keep in mind when you're starting is that Facebook is like a reunion of family and friends. You got to treat it that way. And so your advertising or your positioning when you come into Facebook, regardless, and we'll talk about both strategies tonight, has to be keeping that in mind. Most people are there for the purpose of either being entertained, catching up with people that they already know, and looking at pictures, which I'll talk about in a second. So that's what we're there on Facebook to do. So you got to think with when you're coming into market or sell, make connections, you got to be behaving as if you're walking into someone's community gathering. So let's look at a couple of other places. YouTube, you should really be thinking about as a personalized television network. And the interesting thing about that personalized television network is that for the most part, it's personalized television without any type of advertising. The only people that are going to show up to watch your network, whatever it is that you're sharing, has to be driven there from some other source. There is not a whole ton of organic search that will drive people to channels on YouTube unless you've prepared your YouTube channel for that. So that takes some art and some science to do. It takes some SEO, which is search engine optimization. But for the most part, people, even if you do that all really well, people aren't going to get to your content on YouTube that way. They're either going to get to your content on YouTube by you taking them there, so taking them by the hand and guiding them there, or by those people that you bring to your content now sharing that content with other people. That's what viral marketing really is. At its core is people sharing stuff. So if you go back to my little 1800s marketing example, that's people that are standing outside with their sign, ringing the bell, and they serve really good food in their restaurants. So people hear about it and they decide to start coming. Word of mouth, still the most powerful marketing agent that you'll ever have. So do what you say you're going to do. That's just marketing 101 right there. But let's move on. So Twitter, for the most part, is a gathering of news reporters, would be the best way to think of it. If you're going to be using Twitter in your strategy, your whole strategy is about right here, right now, and what's timely right in this moment. In fact, this is why a lot of business people, and especially lately I've heard, are abandoning Twitter, they're moving out of Twitter, because Twitter has never really become what Facebook is, which is your media collection and your friends and family and your whole communities there. But Twitter has become a great platform in some ways for things that are newsworthy or interesting. So if you flip through a newspaper, yes, young people, pick up a newspaper sometimes, it's helpful for you to contextualize that. And I'm young too. Occasionally I'll look at a newspaper. I know what they are. I know. Most of you probably think I don't, but I do. So newspaper has the sections of the newspaper. It has news, it has sports, it has celebrities or entertainment, it has classifieds, all of those things. But what's most important about Twitter is your PR angle, your press public relations angle to it. Twitter is all about right here, right now. And it's also about brevity, which means you got to keep it short when you're on Twitter. The other thing you got to consider about user behavior on Twitter that's really important is that most people never go and scroll through other people's profiles. So on Facebook, it's common all the time. You might say, oh, there's Ken. I want to go research him, check him out, know what he talks about, know what he's into. And they'll go look at my profile and they'll look at all the things I talk about and all the momentum stuff and the things I share and all that. So they're interested in that angle of it. People don't do that for the most part on Twitter. It's very rare that people will go and look through someone's timeline and see all the things that they've said. So this is where that here and now element becomes so critically important. So you have to be consistent if you're going to use Twitter in your marketing strategy. You have to be newsworthy if you're going to use Twitter in your marketing strategy. And you build crowds that are typically built around that newsworthiness or that level of interest. The other thing about Twitter that's important is that a lot of times it can't just be about you. And a lot of businesses get this really strong in their marketing. They think, you know what, every marketing piece that I have has to be about me. It has to be about my stuff. It has to be about me bragging. And they try to pretend that the rest of the world that's out there doesn't exist. That's actually a really difficult marketing strategy, to just ignore that there's an outside world outside of your brand. And it's kind of strange because for the most part, the reality is people are at least educated enough to know you probably have some competitors out there, or you have other people out there that do what you do. So Twitter, again, think of it as a news convention, a gathering of reporters. People are gathered around things that are newsworthy. Now, LinkedIn, that's more like a networking meeting. So the reality is we're attached to professional contacts, colleagues, any of those types of people that are out there at this point are on LinkedIn because they are really looking for their business colleagues and their business associates at this point. So those people, you really want to be thinking, how do I communicate with them and give them something of value in their professional life? That's really the key thing. So if you're someone that has a business tool, like we'll just use a database as an example, or a marketing tool, or something that could help people in their professions, LinkedIn can be a phenomenal tool for you. In fact, LinkedIn might be a better tool for some of you out there who are in the B2B space, the business-to-business space. That might be a better tool for you than Facebook, because if you can grab somebody's attention and get them paying attention and in your conversation, then they might be a lot more likely to pay attention than they would be on Facebook when they're at their family reunion. So I know those aren't totally true. Yes, there are certainly some people that use Facebook for business. I'll hear that all the time. There are certainly some people that use Twitter to share what they had for dinner. But the reality is this is kind of how those apps have emerged. And then you add in apps like Instagram and Snapchat. We can talk about user behavior all day. But what I'm doing here is setting a stage for how you should be thinking about social networking. And if you're going to market in that space, and I don't care if it's organic marketing or paid marketing, you first have to understand the user behavior, and especially how do your target people really use those networks. And I gave you some generalizations, but the truth is, this is how we establish really effective campaigns in social networking and social media, is we understand first how users use the platform, and then number two, how users expect that platform to behave. So if I'm on Facebook and I'm constantly trying to drive them to something that doesn't feel like something they'd normally see on Facebook, chances are they're not going to stick around. And you're going to see that reflected in your numbers. So some other things to think about when you're approaching your campaigns, because I want to stay big picture for a moment before we really take the drill and get into the soil and talk about how to manage these campaigns. So the other thing you should be thinking about when you're thinking about that is some lesser known facts about these different social networks. So one of the things people forget a lot of the time is that Facebook is the largest photo sharing site on earth. More people go to Facebook to share and look at photos than they do anything else. So photos or imagery should be a key part of what you're trying to do in your strategy. And in fact, entire social networks like Instagram, for example, have sprung up around image sharing and people having conversation around images. For those of you who didn't know this, I imagine some of you do, Instagram, guess what? Owned by Facebook. And the same marketing strategy that's being put in place around Facebook and has been developing over the past few years is going into Instagram as well. In fact, Instagram is really heavily relying on those social posts and those types of things. So they own Instagram, so that really they own the two biggest image sites in the world. And yes, there are lots of other image sites, but I just want you to think about that behavior. So that, what does that tell you? The images are important and the imagery is important. So you want to have a focus on that and any type of campaigns that you're developing. YouTube, as another example, is monetized constantly. So a lot of people will urge you or tell you, don't share a ton of content on YouTube, or don't go too deep into using that platform, or, there's not a whole lot of ways that, unless you're driving them to something else, which you should do. I'll talk about that. You always want to have a website to send them to. But YouTube itself is monetized constantly. And in fact, of course, the example you hear all the time is Psy, the Gangnam Style guy, who's made millions and millions off of YouTube. Music artists make millions and millions off of YouTube, whether by allowing ads in there, using ads on YouTube, getting video views and participating in those programs. There's a really important checkbox on YouTube that you can check that says you want to monetize your videos. So lots of ways you can do that. And there are times and places where you'll have videos that you can monetize versus videos that you really specifically need to control and send back to your website and your things. But a lot of people get that mixed up and never take advantage of the monetization strategies. And especially those of you with larger audiences or with your videos or your content tending to get shared a lot, you want to make sure that you're keeping that factored in, that YouTube gets monetized all the time. And you also want to think about some of the facts about who is using these different social networks and who pays attention to them. Because again, that target market piece is so important. Who are you trying to have a conversation with? And finally, the last thing that most people forget about all the time, and that is really becoming a priority in the internet marketing space, is mobile. In fact, one of the things I share in presentations all the time, and I got my phone right here to show that, right, just so that you remember. And I got a tablet somewhere. I got like 2 tablets around the house. And I always joke, I could show this to the people that have seen me speak at the big table for Live Out Loud. For people that see me speak there, I could show my geeky alarm clock here. So I got to make sure that I get that out and ready. My dash, it's here, that shows my Facebook and my news and stuff. So I'll show that. But the other thing you want to consider about mobile, for those of you that are out there, is that more and more people are using mobile more than they are using their laptops or their desktop computers to view your content. So if your ad isn't mobile friendly and your website or wherever you're sending them isn't mobile friendly, you got problems. In fact, for the most part, if you're going to run any type of paid traffic strategy, which you should, and I'll talk about that later in this call, you should have some ads running across these various services if you want traffic now, then the reality is that you better be thinking about mobile. And the truth is that Google has become so emphatic about making sure that you use the mobile strategy that they are starting to drop websites out of Google search if they are not mobile friendly, meaning that they got to load quickly and they got to look good on your mobile device. So if they don't, then that's a big problem for your website, and it's something that you need to consider and adjust quickly, especially if you have an existing website that's been around for a while. So mobile is key to any strategy. In fact, for most of you, you should be developing mobile first or thinking mobile first, because the majority of your traffic is going to come from there. So a lot of people don't think about that. They just think about people using a computer, especially those of you who are not professional marketers and people that are keeping up with all the marketing trends that happen. And a lot of you shouldn't be doing that. You should have teams that do that for you, or you should be watching these types of events where we'll cover those things. So for now, let's talk about organic versus paid traffic. And I'm going to talk about all of the networks kind of throughout this, but a lot of times I'm going to focus on Facebook, because Facebook is really the big dog in the yard. As I mentioned, it's the most common, and a lot of you that are out there want to learn how to either leverage your Facebook or make your Facebook effective for you, all those different types of things. And then a lot of people are also wondering about that organic traffic versus paid traffic. So let me define those terms first, because I don't like to use a lot of jargon, and I like to break those things down for those of you who are not familiar with internet marketing or even just marketing terms in general. So the first thing, organic traffic means traffic that comes from any source that you didn't pay for. So I like to think of that as marketing where you guide people by the hand and you bring them to your stuff, or somebody else brings somebody, guides them by the hand, either via email or text message or giving them a flyer or however it is to view your particular piece of content. It means that it came from some source that you didn't pay for. Then there's paid traffic, which for the most part, paid traffic is what drives the web now. If you want to test your landing pages or to test your offers, to test your blog content, to see how different things are received by different audiences, to find out whether your call to action is working, I like that word, whether it's working, then you need to make sure that you have paid traffic as some form of strategy in there. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to have huge budgets. And I'll throw this out. I've seen a lot of campaigns that are really effectively launched for like $25 a day. And I'll talk about those today. But the truth is that you got to have something in there that allows you to test, that allows you to generate new leads. And paid traffic is truly the way that happens. So for those of you who've been resisting that and trying to figure out other ways, I'll talk about some other ways. But the truth is that paid traffic has got to be a part of your strategy eventually. And especially with the targeting tools that you have in Facebook, and even Google has moved along a lot in those ways, you can target your audience and have conversations very specifically with the audiences that you want. And then if you watch that remarketing replay that I talked about last week, and if you didn't happen to be on that, we'll make sure we get that replay out to you. Just let me know. Ken, you know how to get a hold of me on Facebook. Send me a message. Get you that remarketing replay. Where I talked about there are even ways with advertising that you can segment your list before they ever opt into your database. So you can start to really refine those groups that you're having conversations with through Facebook marketing. But let's talk about the difference. So organic traffic. Organic traffic is really, truly networking. And so people would say, well, how do I network online? So let me give you some suggestions. Facebook has this awesome feature, and so does LinkedIn and even Twitter to that regard, called groups. So for those of you that have not joined any groups, those of you who have not joined any associations, those of you that aren't actively going out to try to meet people and be parts of different communities, that's something you need to add right away. In fact, for those of you that are new to social, you want to get in there. And then here's what you do. The same thing that you would do in a networking event. So let's go to a networking event, and I even have some props right here. I have some cards sitting right here, and I want people to see who they are. So they have names on them, but I have cards right here. So if I received a giant pile of cards at a networking event, pop quiz for those of you out there, what would be the most effective way to guarantee that I'm probably going to get some sales out of this group? I'll just give you time to think about it before I answer. What would be the most effective way? The truth is, would probably be to pick up the phone or email each one of these individually and try to either schedule a meeting with them, schedule lunch, schedule coffee, sit down with them and talk to them. Find out what they need. But that one-on-one touch is generally more effective than one-on-many. That doesn't mean there isn't a time and place for one-on-many, and I'll talk about that. But in a networking environment, that one-on-one touch and that one-on-one follow-up is really critical and really important. And the same thing is true, actually, on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, doesn't matter. If you meet a contact that's someone that you're in a dialogue with and that you're having a good conversation with, you should immediately try to get in conversation with that person one-on-one. Facebook and LinkedIn both have direct message capability. So if you're in a group and you're talking to somebody or you're responding to a thread and you see them as someone you could potentially have a relationship with, reach out to them directly. A lot of us forget about that strategy, especially organically, because it's the same thing we would do in a networking group. Doesn't matter where you are, whether you're at the chamber, BNI, doesn't matter. You're going to follow up with people one-on-one somehow, whether it's one-on-one emails, phone calls, whatever, or you're not going to follow up at all. And then in that case, you really need to stick around on these calls and these trainings because seriously, we need to make sure that you're following up with people. The money's in the follow-up. We talk about that all the time. Now, so if you're networking, use groups. Make direct contact. And then for the people that you're networked with, either on especially on LinkedIn, but also on Facebook, if you're looking for networks or communities of people, ask for referrals or ask for people to share things. Too many people never ask those questions. And don't do it in a spammy, annoying way, like please share this thing, or have people share things every 5 seconds. Share this link, now share that link, and then we're turning into robots. But ask the person, would you be willing, based on your knowledge of me or your experience of me, to share a little bit about what I'm doing? What would make sense to take this to your audience? What would make sense to post this in the group? Look for how you can, in your business, can add value to whatever conversations are happening either for that person or in those groups. So if you're going into those groups, just like if you're going into a networking event, constantly trying to take away from the other people that are there or just collect leads or collect business cards so that you can take them back to your lab and do whatever it is you do with them, then you're probably not going to be that effective. And people aren't going to remember you either. So you got to be really thoughtful in how you approach these relationships. But you also have to ask for referrals and you have to ask for connections. It's the most important piece about networking. It's also one of the most important pieces if you're going to try to find organic traffic online. In fact, an entire type of marketing called affiliate marketing, which I know Svetlana out there, I'm going to do an affiliate marketing training. I promised it ages ago, and I've been bad about that, I'm not gonna lie. But affiliate marketing is an entire industry that's devoted to people connecting others within their databases or sharing their products or services with their databases. So you want to think about that organic approach. So on Facebook, you'd leverage the groups, get in direct contact with people. LinkedIn has both groups and associations. So again, get in there, talk to people, send direct messages, ask them what they're looking for, ask them what they need. You can find a lot of people that way. In the affiliate marketing space, again, if you connect with somebody that has a database or that has an existing community, what would be a good way to ask them to give you some referrals or to introduce you to their audience? That is the most effective way to get leads still to this day. Even if you're a master marketer, which a lot of you will be from out there, and a lot of you are going to learn this really quickly. But for those of you who don't have that, I want you to start leveraging the existing network that you have already and start using some organic skills on all of the different social networks to get into the communities that you want to get towards, because somebody's already got your audience somewhere. You just got to find out how you can get in front of them. So that is an example of organic strategy, the same way that you do it offline. Now, let's talk about paid strategy, because I mentioned that this is vital throughout your process. So the truth is that advertising, as we've mentioned, has to become less like advertising. Traditional advertising is not something that a lot of people pay attention to. Now, I'm going to point out, actually, I'm going to talk about drivers for a second here, and I'm going to talk about what grabs people's attention. And I'm going to use the most easy example in the world, because what's interesting is, for the most part, if you look at how people behave around their televisions, for the most part, when a commercial comes on, what do we want to do? We want to skip it. We want to fast forward through that thing. We don't want to listen to what it has to say. So we're going to skip it. In fact, technology exists for us to jump. People have been sued over this. But then you think about the Super Bowl, which you hear this example a lot. People are tuning in to the Super Bowl to watch the commercials. So you got to ask yourself, why is that? Why is it that people want to watch the commercials that are on the Super Bowl? Or what is it that would make people want to watch my ad or want to pay attention to my content? And I like to divide that into 3 categories. I know a lot of times I simplify these things, and there's tons of strategy. I could do an entire training session on each one of these drivers, and who knows, maybe someday I will. But the reality is I like to keep it simple, especially for those of you that are out there that are new to this social space. So there are 3 marketing drivers that I like to think of, especially when it comes to social networking. So the first one, entertainment. So entertain me. Make me laugh, show me something interesting, show me something funny. And the truth is, for the most part, most of us stay really bland and generic in our advertising. It's pretty terrible. Like, oh, buy this thing because it has this awesome feature and it has this and that and blah, blah, which is not entertaining at all. So entertainment is a huge driver. If you've got a good personality, if you're funny, whatever it is about you that gives you your flavor, bring it to the forefront. Like for me here, I don't mind. I'm kind of strange. I don't mind making people laugh. That's part of what I do. I want it to be interesting. I want it to be entertaining. So people are always willing to click on something entertaining. Trust me, Gangnam Style, random cat videos, David After Dentist, all those memes and all those things that you see out there all the time. That's why people want to be entertained. So entertainment is driver number 1. Controversy, that's driver number 2. So the simplest form of controversy, now I'm not saying bring your politics or your religion or any of that stuff into it, but what I am saying is, first and foremost, be willing to have an opinion. This is a problem for a lot of marketers, and it's like a problem for a lot of politicians too. Come out and make a statement about what it is that you believe or what it is that you think. The worst thing that could happen is if you're wrong, then you have to come out and say you were wrong. Oh well. The reality is, for the most part, though, take a stance on something or make other people in your audience take a stance on something. So don't go for false controversy. I see people do this all the time, and it's kind of annoying. But I want you to ask questions, like some of the best campaigns I've seen. I worked once with a jewelry company, one of my favorite people out there who hopefully will watch this replay someday and go, I know that's me. So I was working with a jewelry company who I shared these drivers with. We talked about, I'm only through 2, entertainment and controversy, but I shared controversy and they seemed really interesting, really interested in that. They said, how can I create controversy for a jewelry company? Here was the campaign they came up with, and I loved it. They took this same piece of body jewelry and they put it on 2 different models. And they said, which model do you like better, Facebook friends? Model A or Model B? What was interesting is that discussion alone got them hundreds of comments out there, got people voting. They love Model A, they love Model B, got tons of attention, and inevitably helped them move more of that product that was on that jeweler, that piece of jewelry that was on those 2 models. So in that case, controversy was a huge driver of attention. People wanted to debate. They wanted to talk about those different things. So controversy is a huge driver, even in paid advertising, of taking a stance that either other people don't take or taking a stance strongly and being willing to back it with evidence. So this doesn't mean argue with people, but what it means is be willing to come out and say things strongly and stand behind it, or make other people take that position of saying, why do you believe what you believe, or why are you interested in what you're interested in? Great driver for discussion and great way to get people involved on social media. And then finally, the last one, I just call it value. And value is a word that you hear a lot. Now, value to me has a very simple definition. And you'll probably laugh about this because I'm just going to use it to define itself. So value is actually something valuable. Now, let me rephrase that. It's a tough one. Value is actually something valuable. So that means something that would be of use to someone else. Now, the worst thing that people do all the time is the promise of value or the intention of value, and they never actually get to the value itself. So a lot of times you'll hear these types of campaigns. If you just opt in for this, then I'll give you the value. And then they opt in for that thing and they don't get what they want, or they don't get the answer to their question. Well, if you just buy this, then you get the value, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, for those of you who are doing that with no value at all along the way, or those of you who are doing it with no ability to weave in anything that's useful to someone else, you're just constantly making promises, that's not value. And a lot of people market on Facebook that way. So if you were the guy that was wandering around the cocktail party, constantly promising something and then never showing up with it, that'd be a problem. Now, that said, if you're someone that has value, and value comes in a lot of different forms. Education is one of those pieces of value, and that's the most obvious one. Teach me to do something. In fact, how-to is the most popular category online. How-to videos. How do I fix something? How do I do something? How do I learn something? And again, bring your flavor into it. It's important to have that in value. That's not the only thing that's valuable, though. Education, teaching me to do something, resources that you use, so tools or resources. So not even just the how-to, but what are the ways that you do it? What are the systems through which that you do it? And a lot of you that have products and services could think a lot bigger about what you're doing than you probably are right now at this point. So I want to be thinking about that when you think about value. So tools, tips, resources, education, interest, articles, outside resources. And this is a key one. Don't, again, just pretend that your world is its own little world. You make yourself very small and scarce by doing that. Think collaborative. So think about the useful things that you learn. Like last week, I mentioned Ryan Deiss. I love Ryan Deiss. I'm a member of Digital Marketer Labs. I'm in all his programs. I love his stuff. They're great. And I'm a member of a lot of other communities. That's where I learn what I learn. And then I learn what I learn from you, my coaching clients and the people I train and all those different things as well. But the truth of all these things is that, again, I'll shout out to them all the time. I'll say, you need to go see this valuable thing. And people will remember me. The big myth that a lot of people have is if I ever send somebody off to somebody that's not me, or refer to somebody that isn't me, or refer to an article that isn't mine, they're never going to come back. That's an old form of marketing, and the truth is, it's not true. People tend to remember, especially if you're a valuable person, who gave them that value and why it was interesting to them. So people tend to remember those types of things. So value is a huge driver. So I want to report those 3 things again. Entertainment, controversy, value. You can use all three of those things separately, or you can mix them together. I like to do all of those things, and I like to put them all into campaigns, but you should always be thinking through that lens. Is this entertaining? Is it controversial? Is it valuable and really valuable? Not just I'm promising it's valuable and it isn't. Like, do people perceive it as valuable? If you were sitting at that cocktail party and you were going to teach someone that thing and they were able to respond and ask you questions, would it be valuable to them? And don't just think that way. Understand that your audience knows that it's valuable. That's the biggest thing. Again, don't behave in your marketing as you would behave to yourself. You might think it's valuable, but you got to check in. Does your audience that you think it's valuable? Do the people that you're partnering with think it's valuable? Critical point. So when it comes to paid traffic these days, advertising itself has started to shift. So your ads can't look like ads. So you hear this definition that's used all the time that's called native advertising. One of the things that Facebook has really done a good job of pioneering, and of course everybody now is dogpiling on it because it's excellent, native advertising. So native advertising are ads that don't look like ads. So when you're scrolling through your Facebook timeline, a lot of times you'll see a couple of, things all the time. You'll see some pictures, you'll see some videos, you'll see Facebook posts, you'll see your friend that has weird political views ranting about something and people arguing with him. And then all throughout that, you'll start to see the same pattern and you'll notice what you're clicking on. Now, a lot of times with native advertising, people don't even realize that they're clicking on an ad. It's something that looks interesting to them. So the ad is an image and text that actually looks interesting to them. So that in its core is native advertising. And then when they get to your page or when they land on your website or when they go wherever you're sending them from that ad, you're actually giving them what you say you're going to give them. Now, that's where remarketing that I mentioned last week becomes such a critical piece. And in fact, it can increase your conversion like 25 to 50% right off the bat by implementing it. Because most of us, again, have that scarcity. We say, all right, I'm going to pay for ads and I'm going to send somebody to my blog post, as I'm going to use as an example here. I'm going to send someone to my webinar, to my thing. But I'm going to require that they opt in. I'm going to require that they put their name and their email and all that stuff in there. I'm going to require that to get started. Now, when I do that, by orders of magnitude, I'm going to reduce the amount of people who opt in. They might say, I don't know you. I don't know that I want to sign up for your stuff right now. So in a native advertising model, people are going to land on some content. They're going to land on video. They're going to land on a blog. They're going to land on something that actually gives them whatever you promised. They're going to land on a quiz. That's another popular thing. Quizzes are a great thing that you can leverage toward. And then using remarketing, like we talked about last week, we can follow everybody that landed on that page. So if they landed on a particular quiz or they landed on a particular video, we now have the ability to advertise specifically to those people that landed on that page, on that quiz, on that image, whatever it is. And so for us, as we're preparing campaigns, we want our campaigns to look as little like advertising as possible. And when they get through to whatever page it is, we don't necessarily want that to look like advertising either. Now, that does not mean you shouldn't have a call to action. You should have a call to action in everything. Some percentage of people will take advantage to it. But some people are going to want to get to know you first. So they're going to have to see you a second, a third, a fourth time. They're going to have to see your ad a couple times. They're going to have to follow you and really check you out and make sure that you're good. Whatever it is, you're going to have to make more than one impression. And that's really a key piece right there. So native advertising allows you to do that. So your advertisement should have compelling imagery. They should have headlines and text that actually utilize those three drivers that we talked about. So they should use entertainment, controversy, or value. And you want to make sure that from that point, they're landing on something that's actually valuable to them. And those of you that run remarketing campaigns or are planning to do that, which I know we'll keep talking about in future weeks, will want to keep that in mind because your content can help segment people so that you're targeting very specific interest groups, because you can target based off demographic as well as interest these days. And interest is really the key driver that'll lead to conversion or to a purchase. So let's talk about an effective campaign at this point, because I've provided a big piece of framework. And a lot of you probably expected me to be a lot more tactical. But the truth is, most of you got to understand these pieces first before you can ever get tactical. And I want you to be tactical, but I also want you to behave. I want you to come correct. I want you to behave right when you are approaching a social network. It's really key to say, how do you want to approach it? And how is that going to work for you? And what are the strategies that you're going to use at this point? So really key for you to be thinking about, How does that work? So effective campaigns. So one of the things I like to think about especially when I'm meeting new audiences, or I'm getting in front of new people, or I'm doing new things, is I like to think of my advertising on a points-based system. That's important at this. So let me share how I think about it. You don't always have to do it this way, but you can do this in email marketing too, and it's really effective in email marketing. You can think, for every point of value that you give someone, so if you give them a webinar or a report or a newsletter, or you're teaching them something, doesn't matter. You can give yourself a point. You can say, yay, I've earned 1 point in that customer's mind, 1 point of value. If it's something a little bit more in depth, like this webinar, for example, is going to be close to an hour long by the end, really in depth, lots of different skills, I might give myself 2 or 3 points. The people that watch this and really sat through it get 2 to 3 points of value. Then anytime I ask for something, I say, give me your email address, give me your credit card, give me whatever it is, I'm going to subtract 5 to 7 points. Now, I'd always recommend, especially for you newbies, to go higher. Subtract 7 points from yourself, with the goal being that you always want to stay at 0 or in the positive, and the more positive, the better. So if you're batting like 5 points all the time versus someone that's constantly in the negative, that's constantly asking for someone, that's a good place to be when you're approaching your marketing. So I want you to think about, measure your points of value to your requests, because for most of us, we're asking way too much and we're asking way too soon. We're not giving people enough time to figure out who we are and what they should want from us. And then the other differentiator I want to throw at you for effective campaigns is, a lot of times people will spend a lot more time begging for conversation than they will than asking someone to buy something that's of a very low cost. So something that's 99 cents to $5. And a lot of times people say, well, why? Because something that's 99 cents to $5, I'm actually having them buy their way into something, getting all their contact information and all that stuff that way, rather than sitting around begging for it all the time. And especially if people are constantly noticing you begging for emails, begging for contact information, begging for that stuff, chances are they're not going to pay attention to you. They're going to think of you as a marketer or think of you a certain way. So that point system, again, can be really helpful. And a lot of times, low-cost buys are better things to drive to than free stuff. That's not to say that free stuff can't be helpful in certain campaigns, but in reality, especially lately these days, if they've seen you 2, 3, 4 times and you've given them that much value, try driving to a low-cost buy, 99 cents to $5. A lot of times that can really help get people in, get your contact information without all the drama of begging for it, or capturing a first name in an email and then driving them through a campaign that gets all the rest of their info. It's a lot harder. And so we talked about the 3 marketing appeals. So now I want to talk about what 3 elements does an effective campaign have. And this is where I'm going to leave it tonight. And then in the future, I'm definitely willing to talk tactics. In fact, I want these webinars to be valuable to you. What are you doing in your marketing? What are you doing in your business? What are you doing in your personal development? So I talk about all of those things here at Momentum. And we're going to keep weaving those things together, because some of you are familiar with this from Live Out Loud. You're in other networks with me. And so I want this to be both additive and, give you something new on top of all of that. So for those of you that are out there, here are the 3 phases. And if you see me at the big table, you've heard these before, but it's good to make note of them again. So the first phase is interest. So I must interest you. So I must show you something that's of interest to you. That's simple. So I can use those 3 drivers. I can use Facebook ads. I can use organic methods. Doesn't matter the method. The first phase is always interest. I must get you interested. Then the second phase is activity. I must ask you to do something. So that thing might be, give me some contact information. That might be, buy this thing. Or it might be, check this out. It might be, check out this article, check out this video, check out this thing. Doesn't matter. There has to be an activity. Okay? So interest. Then we go to activity. And then finally, we have to have conversion, which means eventually, at some point in the process, we have to make a sale. Now, it's amazing how simple that was: interest, activity, conversion, and how few campaigns I see online, offline even, that drive that way. That I want to grab your interest, I want to ask you to do something or bring you along to do something, and then from that place, I want you to buy something from me, or I want to make a sale. So all effective campaigns have those 3 things. They have an interest phase, and that courting phase online needs to be a little bit longer. As you heard me say in the points model, you need 5 to 7 points of value for a lot of people. So they need to be able to see stuff or learn things from you. And there are a lot of masterful marketers we'll talk about on other calls that do this really well. And then activity, what am I going to give you? What do I want you to check out? What do I want you to do? And then, so if it's an effective campaign, here's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be measuring along each one of those phases. So interest, at the interest phase, I have the ability to measure organic or paid. If I post something on someone's Facebook, do they respond or not? That would be a 0 or a 1. If I paid for those advertisements, Facebook is going to show me all that data. They're going to say how many people saw this versus how many people actually clicked on it or paid attention to it or did something with it, engaged with it in some way. I don't know how else you engage with it but clicking. Maybe people just rub their screens. Oh, I love that ad. Doesn't matter. Whatever they engage with it. Does Facebook track that? That might be a little creepy. We'll see how that works. But interest to activity. So you got to say, you got to measure each one of those phases. First of all, measure if they're not interested, you got to do something that's more interesting. Then, did they do your activity? So when you ask them to do the next thing, check this out, watch this video, do whatever, do they actually do it? And you can measure that with things like Google Analytics. You can measure that with any type of website statistics. You can measure that in your database if you're having people opt in. And then finally, conversion. Do they ever get around to buying the thing that you want them to buy? So regardless of what that is, this is why when you're in Live Out Loud and all the places we talk about business, Live Out Loud especially, Laurel and all the experts I know talk about that funnel. That's why you need those low cost offers, the 99 cents to $10 kind of offers, because I want to date you before I marry you. I want to get to know you before I'm going to live with you. So I measure each one of those things all across the way. So when my campaigns break down, I have the measurements to say which phase of the campaign made them break down. If it's at the interest phase, do something more interesting. If it's at the activity phase, you can either change some text or change some copy or maybe change some imagery to say, is this really something that they want? And if not, I can always switch whatever that activity is or ask them to do something different. And then finally, conversion, do they buy the thing? So all of those things have to add up to conversion in the end. You want your campaigns to convert. So in effective campaigns, that's what I'm doing. So that takes us all the way back to the beginning when we're considering social networks. And we're considering, what is it in a social campaign that makes a social campaign effective? Well, the best way to grab someone's interest is to behave in a way that they're expecting or interested in on that platform. So when you're thinking about Facebook, it's got to be something that would be appropriate for a gathering of family, friends, and community. And if you have business communities, that's fine. Use them for business communities. LinkedIn, exactly that. What would be appropriate at work? What would be the things I would be interested in hearing about while I'm at work? Training, tools, resources, etc. YouTube, what would be something I'm actually interested in watching? Something that I would actually care about for more than 5 seconds. That isn't what you think I would care about, but I actually care about. Twitter, what's newsworthy? What's happening right now? What do I need to know about in the world? All those types of things. Instagram, your pretty picture. What am I going to look at? Pinterest, same thing. Arts and crafts, all those types of things, imagery around that. So in the interest phase, I realize that I'm behaving in a way that makes sense based on that network. If I'm on Facebook and all I ever talk about is business and I'm targeting a non-business audience, which is most people on Facebook. Most of us are not just targeting each other. Like, it's okay to target each other. Some people are targeting me. I see who you are. I know you're marketing me. I know what's going on. But for the most part, you're trying to target, the average person in your demographic, the professional, the person that doesn't know that you're stalking them around, marketing to them. So I have to behave in a way in that interest phase that really gets them involved in whatever it is that I'm doing. I have to have a compelling activity, something that they actually want to do from seeing my content or seeing what it is that I'm doing that leads them to the next place. And then I eventually have to move them forward into a buy. And I don't want to do that too soon. If I ask them to buy something right away and they don't even know me, chances are a few people will buy. Some people just buy because that's who they are. But for the most part, they won't. I got to build a relationship with them. Interest, activity, conversion. That's how effective campaigns are made. So with native advertising and all the ground that we covered tonight, this is a great way to use your Facebook. And I know I covered a ton of strategies tonight. I know for some of these in future sessions, we're really going to have to get more in depth. Like, what groups do I join on Facebook? Or what should my ads look like? Or et cetera, et cetera. But I don't want to do that without a framework. So golden rules. Behave the way the platform expects you to behave. If you're on Facebook, make sure you're leveraging plenty of imagery because it's the largest photo sharing site in the world. So share images, share things that would be appropriate for a family and friends reunion. You want to make sure that you're using those drivers. So entertainment, controversy, value. That's another golden rule. If it doesn't have that, don't do it. And then finally, the third thing, again, the 3 phases of an effective campaign: interest, activity, conversion. And that is how you manage your social marketing campaign. So walk in using the data the way that you would use that data, the way you would walk into a networking event or a restaurant or someone else's conversation, prepared to behave that way. And I love talking about these topics. I love talking about stuff that's relevant to you. So whether you're in biz, the chamber, wherever I met you, Live Out Loud, I know that you're out here because you want tools to either build up yourself or build up your business, or build up whatever it is you're doing in your life. There's a lot more to life than just business. So for all of you that are out there that are watching these, I would love to hear what you want to hear. I would love to hear what makes sense for you. And of course, I'm always going to bring strategy, hopefully some entertainment for you, and give you the best I can here on Find Your Momentum. So thank you for being out there. I appreciate your time. And if you're watching this on the recording, happy July 4th for those of you that are in the US. Blow up some fireworks. Blow off your small piece of the planet to celebrate the foundation of this country. Social media campaigns, managing them. Hope you're all ready to get started doing that after the 4th. So have a great holiday. See y'all soon. Appreciate you. Woo!